Before the process of healing began, Sarah's days were filled with a sense of heaviness that shadowed every moment. Each morning, she would wake early, the sun peeking through the curtains of her small apartment in Chicago. Despite the sunny skies outside, a dull ache resided in her heart, whispering reminders of pain she wished to forget. Sarah's daily routine, while seemingly normal, was covered in layers of sadness. She would brush her tangled hair, splash cold water on her face, and slowly make her way to the kitchen to brew her favorite coffee. Yet, even that simple act brought little joy. The smell of the rich brew was just a momentary distraction from the worries that weighed down her spirit. Throughout her childhood, Sarah had learned how to hide her scars. Growing up in a home filled with tension and conflict, the love she craved was often overshadowed by criticism and neglect. She taught herself how to smile, even when her heart felt heavy with sadness. To those around her, Sarah appeared strong and composed, but inside, she was battling feelings of unworthiness. After enduring emotional struggles, her past relationships became a reflection of that pain. She struggled to connect with friends and hold on to romantic partners, often fearing that if they truly saw her, they would turn away, just like those before them. Every time she put effort into a relationship, she felt a rush of hope mixed with dread. Her fear of being hurt again acted like a wall, keeping her isolated from the warmth of meaningful connections. Even in groups, she often felt like an outsider, listening to laughter and happiness, but unable to join in. Instead of reaching out, she buried herself in work and hobbies, hoping that busying her mind would help dull the sharp edges of her memories. Throughout her childhood, specific events shaped Sarah's sense of self. The first time she felt truly hurt was the day her father left. She was just 8 years old, smelling of fresh crayons and sun-kissed grass, playing outside when she heard raised voices inside her home. The associated memories of that day locked onto her heart, leaving her with an overwhelming fear of abandonment. She often looked for ways to be perfect, hoping that this would shield her from ever feeling that loss again. The weight of her childhood memories lingered around her, eroding her confidence. In school, when classmates laughed and played, she often excused herself to the library, clutching her books like she was holding on to the last fragments of herself. Even as she grew older and moved away from her hometown, those emotional chains followed her. Each romantic relationship ended in hurt, adding to her belief that she was unlovable. And then there were the friends who unintentionally walked away as they grew closer to partners. In conversations, she often masked her feelings with humor, using jokes to distract from the truth. Friends would smile, getting lulled into easily overlooking their friend's troubled heart. In her 20s, the toll of unresolved trauma was becoming impossible to ignore. Sarah felt distant from others, her experiences setting off emotional alarm bells every time she ventured into vulnerable territory. The loneliness started to seep into her bones, making even simple interactions feel exhausting. It was as if a fog hovered over her life. She couldn't see a way out, feeling lost at sea without a guiding star. Yet, beneath the surface, a flicker of hope remained. Even in her darkest moments, Sarah held on to the slight possibility of healing. She wanted to escape the cycle of pain, seeking a path to self-acceptance and understanding. Each day began as a battle, yet a quiet voice inside whispered, "You are worthy. You can heal." This small voice fueled her desire to seek a different path, to one day feel connected and whole again. Amidst her daily struggles, hope began to crack through the darkness, reminding her of the beauty of possibility. Over time, she would learn that confronting her past could lead not only to peace but to a renewed sense of purpose. As the days passed, Sarah began to feel the weight of her struggles more intensely. The familiar burden of sadness pressed on her heart, refusing to ease. While the outside world continued to spin, she found herself standing at a crossroads. Deep down, she began to sense that something wasn't quite right, that her unresolved wounds were pulling her back into a place she did not want to be. Yet the thought of facing her past made her stomach churn. The internal battle between the need to heal and the fear of confronting her painful memories was like a storm raging inside her mind. Each time the thought of therapy crossed her mind, a wave of self-doubt washed over her. What would she even say? Could she share the depths of her pain with a stranger? Sarah would often talk herself out of it with excuses that felt reasonable at the time. "I'm too busy to think about this," she would tell herself. "I have a job to focus on, friends who need me, and hobbies that keep me distracted." The busier she kept herself, the less she had to confront the haunting memories nagging at her thoughts. However, the avoidance only deepened her sense of confusion. Strong emotions would hit her like waves, and instead of acknowledging them, she threw herself further into work. Days spent pouring herself into projects often turned into nights filled with restless energy, where she found herself unable to sleep. Whenever the memory of her father's departure drifted into her mind, she would shake it off. "It was a long time ago, I should just move on," she would repeat, as if saying it would make it true. In reality, though, that strategy left her feeling more lost and alone. In social settings, Sarah would frequently observe others sharing their own troubles, and it felt almost liberating. However, every time friends would ask how she was feeling, she would quickly respond with a cheerful smile and a simple, "I'm doing great." Deep down, she knew it was untrue. For all her laughter, there was a sadness weighed heavily on her heart. Pushing her wounds aside felt safer, but in doing so, she sabotaged any chance of connection. The more she wrapped herself in false smiles, the further the chasm formed between herself and others. Avoiding her feelings became a daily routine. Sometimes her friends would comment on how well she seemed to have it all together, which gave her a brief moment of satisfaction. But whenever someone praised her strength, she felt a twinge of guilt. They didn't see how fragile she truly was behind closed doors. In private moments, dark thoughts crept in, whispering doubts that echoed through her mind. "You're not strong, you are just good at pretending," they said, leaving her feeling even smaller. At times, Sarah sat alone and considered the idea of opening up, but the fear of judgment weighed heavily on her heart. "What if they think I'm crazy?" she would wonder, convincing herself that seeking help would only invite criticism. The fear felt tangible, almost like a physical barrier that blocked the door to her healing. No matter how many times she internally debated calling a therapist or confiding in a close friend, that worry stayed firmly rooted, like a thorn in her side. Even at night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Sarah fought with herself. Thoughts swirled about her past, her shame, and the desire for healing. Some nights were more peaceful than others, yet the truth remained, waiting for her to face it. She just needed to let go of the excuses that kept her stuck. As she struggled in silence, she knew that layer by layer, she had to peel back the worries that held her down. Deep within, a small voice nudged her forward, repeating the mantra, "You deserve happiness. You can heal." It was time to close the gap between her pain and the hope for a better tomorrow. One evening, as Sarah sat on her couch, flipping through an old photo album, an unexpected wave of emotion washed over her. The pictures captured smiling faces and warm memories, but they also brought back moments she had tried so hard to forget. There, amid the joyful laughter of friends, was a familiar face, the face of her father, right before everything changed. A lump formed in her throat as she remembered how the light in her life dimmed when he left. It was a stark reminder of all she had lost, and suddenly, the weight of her emotions felt undeniable. Tears streamed down her cheeks, and for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to cry. In that moment of vulnerability, something inside her began to shift. It felt as if a small dam had burst, releasing feelings she had held captive for years. It was a confirmation that deep down, she knew she needed healing. The realization washed over her like a gentle rain, and she felt both scared and strangely relieved. Finally, she understood that acknowledging her wounds did not make her weak, it made her brave. The next day, Sarah went out for coffee with her friend Jessica, who sensed something had changed in her. Jessica had been a patient listener for a long time but didn't push Sarah to talk about her struggles. This time, however, Sarah felt different. She wanted to share. "Can I talk to you about something?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. Jessica nodded encouragingly, and as they sat in a cozy corner of the cafe, Sarah suddenly felt a spark of courage. As she opened up about her struggles and the pain linked to her father's departure, she was surprised by the weight that lifted from her chest. Jessica listened attentively, her warm eyes showing empathy and understanding. "It's okay to feel this way, Sarah," she said gently. "It's important to talk about these feelings." Hearing those words washed over Sarah like a soothing balm, she realized how essential it was to connect with someone about her emotions. For the first time, it felt safe to voice the struggles that had kept her silent for so long. With Jessica's support, Sarah began exploring her feelings more openly, weeks turning into a path of self-reflection she never knew she could take. It was the tiny steps she made that sparked a wave of growing confidence within her. One day, while journaling, she wrote down what had caused her hurt, noting how the events shaped her self-worth. Writing down her fears made them seem a little less daunting. It felt like giving light to the shadows that haunted her. As word of this connection and realization spread in her mind, Sarah started looking for ways to heal. She decided to take a small step and attended a local support group. Walking into the room, she was filled with anxiety. Would she be accepted? Would her story resonate with others? But she pushed forward, hope mingling with her fears. When she heard others share their experiences, she felt a wave of recognition. Many faced similar battles, and though the details varied, the emotions found common ground. Listening to their courage gave her encouragement. A profound sense of belonging began to take root. As the weeks went by, Sarah found herself feeling lighter. Each conversation with her support group representatives was an encouragement. They helped her embrace vulnerability, allowing her to gain strength from sharing. The act of opening up became easier with each session, and she could feel herself beginning to change. Although moments of doubt would sometimes creep back in, she would quickly remind herself that this journey was about progress, not perfection. By allowing herself to acknowledge her need for healing, she took the most significant first step. Sarah was still on a long path of understanding her past, but she was no longer walking it alone. With every small win, whether reaching out to friends, going to support meetings, or simply journaling her feelings, her confidence grew. The bonds she formed with others who battled their own shadows illuminated a clearer path forward. Trees of self-doubt began to shed their leaves, making way for a new season of hope and healing. Sarah started to believe she could rise above her past, and with that belief, her journey into the future began to unfold. In the warm atmosphere of the therapist's office, Sarah sat across from Dr. Martinez, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. The gentle hum of the air conditioner seemed to match the rhythm of her heartbeat. Each tick of the clock echoed in her mind, reminding her that this was a pivotal moment in her journey. She took a deep breath, hoping to calm the swirling emotions inside her. Today, she had decided to face her past, the parts that had brought her the most pain. As Dr. Martinez asked her to share her story, a flood of memories rushed forward. Sarah's voice trembled as she recounted her childhood. She talked about her father's departure, how it shattered her sense of safety and left her feeling unlovable. The more she shared, the more emotion bubbled to the surface. At first, it was overwhelming. Tears started to fall, and panic began to creep into her mind. "What if I can't get through this?" she thought, worrying that the pain might engulf her. But Dr. Martinez gently urged her forward, reminding her that it was okay to feel. "These emotions have been inside you for too long, Sarah. Let them out," she said softly. A wave of relief washed over her, and she felt a small flicker of strength. It was as if allowing herself to feel these emotions was the first step toward truly healing. As she delved deeper into her feelings, memories of other losses surfaced, friendships that faded and moments of rejection. Each story opened a wound, yet with each breath, she let a piece of it escape. "I always believed I was not enough," she acknowledged through sobs, revealing the root of her self-doubt. These words held so much power, and she could feel the weight slowly lifting each time she spoke a truth she had buried long ago. Locked within her became her defense mechanisms, those old habits she had developed to protect herself. Sarah realized how often she masked her pain with humor or buried herself in work. These behaviors gave her a false sense of control but ultimately prevented connection. At that moment, she understood they were merely shields that had kept her trapped. Letting go of them was going to be the hardest challenge yet. "Why do I hold on to this?" she whispered to Dr. Martinez, looking vulnerable and exposed. The truth flooded her mind like a rush of water, threatening to sweep her away. Part of her wanted to retreat to the safety of her old ways, where laughter shielded her from vulnerability. But a budding realization took root. The very walls she built to keep herself safe also isolated her from the joy and connection she craved. Hair falling over her face, she took a moment to breathe deeply and focus. With each exhale, she envisioned herself releasing the weight of those coping mechanisms. Letting go doesn't mean failing, she became aware. It means creating space for healing. Suddenly, envisioning that space felt liberating, as if bricks were crumbling, allowing light to shine through. Although moments of panic still flared up within her, this raw honesty about her past ignited a spark of hope. Sarah could sense that transformation was not far away. It was going to be hard, but she reminded herself that feeling the pain was the path to a brighter future. For the first time, she understood that confronting her past was not a sign of weakness but a step toward strength. As the session came to a close, Sarah left Dr. Martinez's office feeling a blend of exhaustion and inspiration. Tears had flowed like a river, but in their wake, the landscape of her heart started to feel freer. For the first time, she realized that vulnerability could lead to strength. Emerging from the overwhelming clouds of doubt, she no longer felt restrained by her memories. Instead, she felt determined to continue on this path of healing, understanding that facing her pain was the first step toward gaining unfaltering clarity. As Sarah settled into her therapy sessions with Dr. Martinez, she began to feel a shift within herself. The heaviness of her past was still there, but now she was ready to confront the negative beliefs that had shaped her for so long. Phrases like, "I'm unworthy of love," and "I'll never be enough," echoed in her mind like an overwhelming chorus that had played continuously throughout her life. Now, sitting across from Dr. Martinez, she understood she had to challenge these thoughts if she wanted to move forward. However, this process was not easy. Each time she attempted to voice these beliefs, Sarah would feel a pang of pain. How could I ever think differently? She would ask herself, feeling certain that these negative thoughts were facts. Dr. Martinez would gently remind her that these thoughts were learned responses from her past, created to protect her, but not always true. Hearing those words was a flicker of hope, but old habits and feelings clung to her like old friends. Sarah recalled her past relationships, often reflecting on how they reinforced her feelings of unworthiness. The most painful memory was of Jamie, a boyfriend who had made her feel small and unwanted, leaving her with doubts about her worth. She remembered moments when she tried to share her feelings, only to have him brush them aside or respond with annoyance. His responses were like a mirror, reflecting back the belief that her feelings were silly or unimportant, which cemented her idea that love was not meant for her. As she recounted these memories in therapy, resistance flooded her mind. But if I let go of these beliefs, what if I end up alone? What if no one will love me? The fear of rejection tightened around her chest like a vice. But Dr. Martinez encouraged her to visualize a different perspective. What if letting go is how you find what you truly deserve? Slowly, a glimmer of realization began to form within Sarah, but the voice of doubt remained loud and overwhelming. In moments outside therapy, when she faced reminders of her past, Sarah instinctively hunched away from the discomfort. Sometimes she would shy away from vulnerable conversations with friends, fearing that once they got too close, they would see the unworthy person she had come to believe she was. Each time a friend progressed in their relationships or found love, jealousy bubbled up inside her, always reminding her that she was still alone. Crushing frustration filled her each time she reflected on how her past kept cropping up, bringing her further away from healing. After a particularly exhausting session, Sarah found herself at home staring at her journal. She had written a question that kept nagging at her. What if I believed that I was worthy of love and connection? Suddenly, she started to dig deeper, writing down all the positive comments she had received from her friends and family throughout the years. Slowly, more words flowed onto the page, bursting forth like a waterfall. You are kind. You bring joy to those around you. You have so much potential. The sincerity behind these words began to chip away at her negative beliefs. That night, as the moonlight filtered softly through her window, an insight began to settle in her heart. Sarah realized that just because something had happened in her past, it didn't determine her future. Each negative thought was an echo of younger Sarah, but she was no longer that girl. She was growing into someone strong and capable of change. With each new week, the process of challenging her beliefs became less daunting. It was still a battle against the shadows of her past, but slowly, she felt lighter, more open. Each moment of resistance without giving in became a small victory. There would be setbacks, days when insecurities crept back in, but Sarah was getting stronger. She was starting to see that feeling worthy of love and connection was not only possible but necessary for her growth. Each positive affirmation was a build-up, an embracing of the changes that were starting to flourish in her heart. If today was not enough, tomorrow could be brighter, and she would continue to challenge the beliefs that once held her hostage. The turning point for Sarah came unexpectedly one evening while attending a friend's birthday party. As laughter echoed around her and the room filled with familiar faces, she felt a compelling mix of joy and anxiety. This was a chance to let loose and celebrate, but the shadows of her past began to creep in. Everywhere she turned, she saw couples laughing and enjoying one another, and it triggered old feelings of inadequacy. Suddenly, Sarah felt the walls closing in, whispers of doubt urging her to retreat to the safety of her home. As the party progressed, Sarah withdrew to a small corner of the room, gripping her drink tightly. The voices around her felt like a distant hum, and her mind spiraled into familiar thoughts. I'll never fit in. They'll never truly understand me. The beliefs she had been working to face loomed larger than life in that crowded space. Just when she thought she might burst into tears, Jessica found her alone in the corner. Hey, are you okay? Jessica asked gently, her voice full of concern. In that moment, something inside Sarah shifted. She looked into Jessica's eyes and began to cry. It was as if the dam she had built around the emotions she held was breaking apart. I feel so lost, Sarah admitted through her tears. It feels like I can't escape my past. I'm scared that I'll always be alone in my pain. Jessica wrapped her arms around Sarah, fully embracing her vulnerability. You're not alone, Sarah. You're strong for facing this. It was that gentle reminder that cracked through Sarah's walls, revealing the truth she had long hidden from herself. In front of her friend and in that moment, the weight of her past felt both terrifying and liberating. Sarah realized she no longer needed to struggle silently. The tears that flowed reflected years of bottled-up pain, and she finally acknowledged that it was time to release it all. Rather than feeling diminished by her emotions, she felt empowered. In this display of vulnerability, she was finally free to be herself. With every tear shed, past experiences began to flash before her eyes, not only the painful moments, but the strength she had also displayed. Sarah remembered times when she helped others and laughed heartily with friends. Through the blur of tears, she recognized a cycle. The pain that haunted her had always been intertwined with the joy she was capable of. Instead of fleeing from her emotions, she decided to embrace them. That pivotal moment at the party ignited a determined fire inside her. Once she left the corner, she engaged in sincere conversations, allowing herself to connect genuinely with others. She shared snippets of her journey, revealing her struggles to friends with new confidence. Instead of holding back, she embraced the present, painting her experience with vibrant strokes while still acknowledging her past. Gradually, the heaviness began to lift. A different feeling emerged, one of empowerment and catharsis. Sarah created space for acceptance, understanding that her past experiences were merely pieces of her story, not the complete narrative. She began to see her growth as a powerful line drawn in her timeline, marking the moments of vulnerability as bridges rather than barriers. While the emotional implications of her past wouldn't vanish overnight, Sarah understood that it was okay to feel the weight. Instead of succumbing to it, she felt an overwhelming wash of hope. Her heart swelled with newfound clarity, settling into her chest, signaling a significant change. Through every tear, every awkward moment, and every embrace of her vulnerabilities, she took action to rewrite her story. What had once been chains became threads of strength, weaving into the fabric of a brighter future. She was still on her journey, but she was ready to take the leap into her true self, facing life with a heart open to change and connection. In the weeks that followed the emotional breakthrough at the party, Sarah felt a quiet transformation begin to take place within her. Each morning, she woke with a sense of purpose that was new and exciting. She had vowed to practice self-care more intentionally, committing to small rituals that offered comfort. Instead of rushing through breakfast, she took the time to savor her coffee, allowing a few quiet moments of reflection to set the tone for her day. One evening, sitting with her notebook, Sarah began to compile a list of self-care practices she wanted to try. On that list were things that had always brought her peace: walks in the park, journaling, or curling up with a good book. She challenged herself to pick at least one activity each day. There was something soothing about seeing these intentions laid out on paper. It felt like taking control of her life in a way she had never attempted before. Each small action nudged her closer towards the healing she craved. On one particularly sunny afternoon, Sarah decided to visit a local park she had loved as a child. Walking beneath the arches of trees and feeling the warm sun on her skin filled her with a sense of comfort. As she listened to the rustle of leaves and the distant laughter of children, she felt the tightness in her chest ease just a little. The fresh air extended into her thoughts, and for a moment she saw a glimpse of a brighter perspective. Thriving under her newfound routines, she continued to harness the tools Dr. Martinez had shared during their sessions. One helpful technique was practicing self-compassion. Instead of criticizing herself when she felt low or overwhelmed, Sarah started gently encouraging herself. She would say phrases like, "It's okay to feel this way," or "I am doing my best." Each time she spoke to herself with kindness, the harsh voices of self-doubt grew weaker. In her journal, she began to write down moments of guilt, times when she felt she had failed or acted harshly toward herself. Following each admission, she challenged those thoughts. "I am not defined by my mistakes," she wrote. "I am learning and growing." With every line, Sarah began to dismantle the guilt that had hung over her for far too long. Aging these perceptions with new insights gave her space to breathe, and she felt lighter day by day. The more Sarah practiced her self-care routines and recognized her self-compassion, the more she noticed distinct changes in her mental state. Tasks that used to feel overwhelming became more manageable. The cloud of anxiety that once loomed over her was beginning to dissipate, revealing moments of clarity and hope. At work, rather than shying away from team projects, she found herself initiating conversations and collaborating more openly. Her confidence surged, complementing the changes she was nurturing within herself. As weeks turned into a month, clear shifts emerged in her behavior. Sarah found herself laughing more easily again, able to join friends in shared moments of joy. An authentic sense of optimism settled in, allowing her to open her heart more to those around her. While there were still rough days, a reminder of her past would occasionally surface. They no longer controlled her. Instead, Sarah acknowledged these feelings as just that, a piece of her journey, not the entirety of who she was. Amid her progress, gradual forgiveness blossomed within her heart. She learned to let go of the pressures of perfection and slowly accepted herself. Forgiving the child who once felt unloved and unworthy grew into one of the most profound gifts she could give herself. In releasing this burden, Sarah found strength in vulnerability. Each step she took had brought forth not only healing but newfound resilience. Gratitude began to fill her consciousness each night as she reflected on her day. Each morning was a chance to start anew, approaching life with love and openness rather than fear. The more Sarah shared her journey with others, the more she recognized the power in connection. She was weaving her story not just for herself but as a beacon for others, proof that despite the weight of the past, healing was truly possible. As Sarah continued her journey of healing, a new sense of confidence emerged, guiding her steps toward rebuilding relationships. The transformation within herself sparked a desire to connect authentically with friends and explore new friendships that felt healthier and more meaningful. She realized that her past held lessons on what to seek in people and what boundaries she needed to set. One weekend, she decided to reach out to an old friend from college, a girl named Mia who had always been supportive and joyful. Sarah felt a little nervous as she typed the message, worrying if Mia would be as receptive as she hoped. But the response was warm and inviting, making Sarah feel a rush of excitement. They agreed to meet for coffee at a nearby cafe, and that day felt like a small victory. When they met, Sarah opened up about her recent experiences and the work she had been doing on herself. To her delight, Mia listened without judgment and found ways to encourage Sarah. As Sarah shared her journey and the importance of self-compassion and boundaries, she felt lighter. It seemed that setting the intention to be honest instead of hiding her feelings created a stronger bond. The conversation flowed easily, and Sarah relished this newfound comfort in vulnerability. For the first time, she felt that she could truly be herself without pretending. Sarah noticed that she was more aware of her feelings during the conversation, openly expressing her likes and dislikes. When Mia suggested a hiking trip, Sarah happily accepted, recognizing that embracing these new experiences felt empowering rather than daunting. Around the same time, Sarah also decided to explore the idea of dating again, something that had seemed frightening not long ago. With her friend Lydia's encouragement, she took the leap to join a local book club, an environment that fostered connection through shared interests. Her heart raced at the thought of putting herself out there, thinking about what past relationships had taught her. This time, she was careful to set boundaries. She would not allow herself to fall into patterns of feeling unworthy if a connection didn't flourish. When she met new people in the book club, Sarah felt a delightful new energy. This group shared thoughts and discussions about stories that sparked deep conversations, often fostering laughter. The connections felt genuine, and she opened herself to friendships without the weight of the past holding her back. While sitting together, she began to express her thoughts and opinions openly, no longer fearing judgment. Sarah not only found enjoyment in their discussions but also took note of how her confidence blossomed whenever she spoke up. As these positive changes unfolded, Sarah noticed a shift in the dynamics of her relationships. Friends responded enthusiastically to her newfound honesty. They appreciated her willingness to share her experiences. The energy among her friends felt lighter, friendships evolved into deeper connections, transforming into spaces where they could share not just joys but also struggles. Questions bounced back and forth without hesitation, and collective support within the group started feeling like a warm embrace. Setting firm boundaries became essential too, especially as Sarah learned to safeguard her mental space. With friends and new dates alike, she made it clear when she needed time alone to recharge. Rather than feeling guilty or anxious about asserting her needs, Sarah discovered the importance of prioritizing herself rather than dichotomously pleasing others. She realized that authentic relationships could thrive in a space of honesty and respect. Witnessing this shift brought happiness not only for Sarah but also for those around her. Friends commented on how much they enjoyed her company and how her newfound presence lit up the room. As she built healthier connections, her circle became enriched with authenticity. Others noticed Sarah's confidence radiating and often sought her advice on how to navigate their own relationships, a testament to her growth and an acknowledgment of the positive change she embodied. The points of connection flourished, adding depth to her life that she hadn't previously thought possible. Friends were no longer just companions, they turned into pillars of support and encouragement. With each conversation, Sarah continued to embrace her journey, weaving her past lessons into meaningful friendships that honored her truth and nurtured her spirit. As Sarah stood on the balcony of her apartment, taking in the glow of the sunset, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. Looking back on her journey, it was remarkable to realize how far she had come. The shadows of her past that once loomed large were now fading to a soft memory. Her perspective had shifted in ways she had never imagined possible. She viewed her past not as a burden but as intricate lessons woven into the fabric of her identity. Each painful experience, every moment of self-doubt, had led her to this transformative place. Sarah understood now that the struggles she faced did not define her. Rather, they were stepping stones toward growth. The realization brought a sense of peace. She had embraced her wounds, learned from them, and transformed them into sources of strength. This new understanding fueled her sense of self-worth and confidence, igniting a fire of hope for the future. With her healing journey well underway, Sarah found purpose in the idea of continued growth. She reflected on the importance of self-care and those supportive friendships she built along the way. These relationships became a vital part of her life, a reminder that she was not alone in her struggles, that vulnerability could lead to incredible connections, and that true happiness thrived in authenticity. Determined to keep nurturing her self-compassion, she began thinking about ways she could pay it forward. Inspired by her own journey, Sarah decided to volunteer at a local community center, offering support to others who faced challenges of their own. As she shared her experiences, she felt fulfilled. Helping others was a way to contribute, to remind people of their worth, and to prove that healing was possible no matter how dark the past seemed. Each story she shared seemed to resonate with someone else, igniting sparks of inspiration in their eyes. Having also embraced the importance of setting boundaries, Sarah now approached her job with renewed vigor. She was no longer afraid to express her thoughts in meetings or share fresh ideas with colleagues. While there were still challenges, tight deadlines, difficult projects, she learned to navigate them with resilience rather than fear. Finding joy in collaboration, Sarah recognized the strength in teamwork. Through open lines of communication and trust, opportunities for growth flourished. In her personal life, Sarah was finally ready to explore deeper connections. While she enjoyed her friendships, she also felt hopeful about romantic possibilities on the horizon. A few dates from the book club she joined led to meaningful conversations that made her heart flutter. As she walked alongside newfound connections, she felt less pressure to perform and more freedom to simply be. The excitement of possibilities hung in the air, and she appreciated taking things step by step, feeling unhurried by time. As she embraced a life filled with growth, Sarah was filled with optimism. She knew that while challenges might still appear in her path, she now had the tools to face them. With every small victory, she recognized her emotional resilience, understanding that healing was an ongoing journey rather than a destination. The prospect of the future, of deepening the relationships she cherished, and of further nurturing her passions brought her joy. Standing there, with colors of dusk illuminating the sky, she felt an overwhelming sense of excitement about what lay ahead. Her laughter rang freely in her heart, signifying not just a hope for tomorrow, but also a celebration of today. With every sunrise, Sarah stepped forward, eager to embrace life, committed to her growth, ready to welcome each new day with open arms.